met Jannette Lumley. We've become friends, and we met at Breakfast with Fran. She came in, and I think that's how we met. Or did we
No, we met at Allison.
At Allison's networking, right. Went to another networking. Red.
Right.
Yes, Red. And we'll invite you to that one as well. And men and women are invited. And we hit it off. And she's a paralegal. And the lawyers, we know lawyers do a good job. However, paralegals are filling a gap between the legal profession and us. And a good way is to meet with a paralegal and find out how we can help, and also have your lawyer in the back if the paralegal needs more help. A lot of them are actually connected with lawyers because there are things that they need to know as well. And neither lawyers or paralegals know every area of law. There's 32 areas of law. The one that Jannette has focused on and the niche that she's filling is with personal injury and accidents and with benefit claims. And it's important to us to know how this works. I'm so happy that Jannette is here to explain a few details. And she brought up a question at all. Oh, I never thought of that. So, thank you, Jannette.
Good afternoon or good morning, everyone. My name is Jannette Lumley, and I'm a paralegal and also an accident benefit representative in Toronto, Ontario. As a paralegal in Ontario, we're allowed to perform certain duties in regards to legal representation. As a paralegal, now you can represent in court as long as the jurisdiction, the monetary jurisdiction is not over $25,000. That's how much we're allowed to take on a case for. We are allowed to practice in areas such as small claims court, landlord and tenant, WSIB, accident benefit claims, and we can do some summary convictions as long as it's under six months, not over. Because that comes with a criminal element as well, and as a paralegal you cannot do anything criminal. It has to go to a lawyer. Now, I'm here today to talk about benefit claims and personal injury. In Ontario, before 2010, you were allowed to make certain claims in regards to an accident. The medical rehabilitation side of it would allow you to claim up to $100,000 in different areas, 72,000 depending on which areas you're looking at. Now, since September 2010, FISCO, which is the Financial Securities of Ontario, they've mandated it that certain benefits are capped at $3,500 for medical rehabilitation. And they measured that with a guideline called Minor Injury Guideline, which is the MIG, because it's acronym, the MIG. And what that is, the guideline covers basically all areas from everything except a fracture or a broken arm, anything like that. When you're putting in a claim for benefits, you're eligible for income replacement benefits and non-earners benefit, caregivers benefit, attendant care benefits, housekeeping benefits, and personal care. Today I want to touch mainly on the income replacement benefits, which goes for self-employed person and employed person. It's very important when you do have an accident, when you're involved in a motor vehicle accident, you have a valid insurance. That's mandatory. If you don't have insurance, you have nothing to get. Also, there's the at-fault person and the person who's not at fault. If you're not at fault, you're allowed to put in a claim. You're entitled for income. When you're not at fault, you can get medical rehab and whatever benefits comes with it. But if you're at fault, the only thing you're entitled for is medical and rehabilitation. The person who is not at fault, they're entitled for to sue the entitled for benefits. For the income replacements, you're entitled for 75% of your weekly benefits, which is $400 maximum. However, you can purchase optional benefits to get more increase on that. For example, you could purchase $600 more, an additional $200, $800, or $1,000 weekly, based on what your weekly benefits would have been. So it's advisable when you're involved in an accident to submit a claim. No matter the seriousness of it, whether it's a minor at the time, because normally when you get into an accident, you don't feel any pain right away. So you think you're fine. Until a week or 2 weeks down the line, you started having pain. You're going to have to submit a claim, because if not, you cannot get any benefits if you do not submit a claim. And there are limitation periods to these different areas. For example, you have 7 days to notify your insurance company when you get involved in an accident. You have 30 days to file the accident benefits claim, which is on an OCF1, which is the application. You have 120 days to sue the at-fault driver, and then you have 2 years to commence a lawsuit against the at-fault driver. Insurance companies scrutinize everything, so you have to be careful. If they have any suspicion in terms of the accident, for example, you mentioned staging. If they believe that an accident is staged, there are certain things that they look at. So they put you under a special situation where you would have to do an examination on the oath. And what that is, that they look at how the accident occurred. For example, a stoplight versus a stop sign. These are some of the stuff that they look at. They look at a major street versus a side street. They look at the number of occupants in the car, as opposed to if you're related or not. So they take all these things into consideration to see if it's a legitimate accident.
Quite often you have a paralegal without you, because paralegals know more than that.
Yes, because yes, you specialize mainly in these areas, which lawyers don't. And as a paralegal as well, they're giving us the opportunity to do all areas. So as a practice, you can work in all the areas within the scope of the paralegal rules. Lawyers out there only specialize in one specific area. And as a paralegal, we're given the opportunity to do all areas, as long as we don't go outside of the scope of our practice. As long as it's not criminal, right? Criminal, yes. And also, as a paralegal, we cannot do real estate law, and we cannot do family. We could initiate it in terms of maybe preparing, but signing off on the documents and stuff like that, we are not allowed.
This is really, and it just saves you money, right, when you work for the paralegal?
Yes.
And then have the lawyer do that extra
Yes,
part.
exactly. That's another thing to it saves you a lot of money, because you could go to a lawyer and he could charge you like $3,000. As a paralegal, we probably charge a fraction of that fee.
Well, I have a question for you. By the way, you can ask questions as well.
Yes.
So I have a question. You mentioned about not at fault, but you must have medical. You must have insurance. What kind of insurance you talking about?
Automobile insurance.
Auto insurance.
You have to have auto insurance, valid auto insurance. And also, when you're in an accident, a lot of employers provide insurance through their company.
So what happens in that situation? For instance, I don't have auto insurance because I don't have a car anymore. I'm a driver. If I'm driving and I'm in the auto share, I've got insurance. Yeah, but suppose I'm a passenger in this not at fault.
Okay.
Where do I go?
Okay. Well, in a situation like that, say for example you're in a vehicle with a driver, but you don't have an insurance. This doesn't sound good, but this is how they do it. They go after the driver. So if you're putting in a claim, they will go after the driver's claim. But first of all, they want to find out if your spouse do have insurance. And if he does have insurance, even although he wasn't driving, they go after that insurance first.
So they go after that husband's insurance first?
Yeah, to at least initiate the claim. The claim has to start somewhere.
Okay, so if the husband, because we're getting older and his retirement coming in. My husband's semi-retired. He's not on a full-time job. No insurance anymore. Well, no, he has auto insurance.
Well, if
go after his
insurance, yes, until, especially if it's going to lead to the more serious side of the accident, where if they're going to sue the third party, the person that hit you, so they would use up that insurance until, that's why the 120 days comes in. Remember I mentioned about the 100 days?
But if that person has a life insurance,
No, not under that. No, it's auto.
it's only
Or through your employer with benefits through your workplace. That's the only way that you can be for accident benefits. Yeah, that's
Otherwise, you have to sue.
well, with the suing, it's not as simple. If you're involved in an accident, this is why the minor injury guideline came in effect. So what they do, the insurance industry measures the injuries that you sustain. And they have this guideline. So they look at things like whiplash, contusion, abrasions. All those things are under this guideline. So it's very difficult to come out of this guideline. Very, very difficult to come out of it, to take you out of that mix. So sometimes it can go anywhere from the date of the accident up to a year.
my husband started to feel
Okay.
the pain in his leg
Yeah.
maybe in 2 weeks after the accident, because the first days we were in shock. How does it happen and why? Like he's offended and guilty. Like he was waiting to see to make his turn and somebody crashed him. But this is what happened. Yes, he started, but of course he didn't make a claim because he thought there is no need to.
Okay. In a situation like that, you have up to 2 years. Right? So you could still submit a claim. However, there has to be evidence. So if he suffered that injury at that time of the accident, has he reported it to his doctor?
That's why he didn't go. He told us
No, because you see, those are some of the factors that they look at.
You have to know about it.
Documentation.
First of all, right?
So first of all, this is where now, as Jillian mentioned with the lawyer,
Yeah.
this is where we have to work alongside a personal injury lawyer. Because with the tort case now, it's up for a bigger claim. And this is where they sue the at-fault driver. But they take a lot of stuff into consideration. They look at economical loss. They look at your pain and suffering. They look at future income. They look at your age. The insurance company take a lot of stuff into consideration before even settling.
This is quite different how it used to be.
Yes, they change it a whole lot. They change it a whole lot. And because of the staging and all these fraud claims that went into play, they make it worse for everybody. So a lot of people are suffering. Because before 2010, September, a person could just go to a rehab or a chiro and say, okay, I've got this person to help me do this housekeeping in the house. And the insurance company would just pay out. Some of the rehab agents, they would put in claims for $20,000, $30,000 on their end just for the rehab. And also the person that's injured, they're getting benefits too for 10, 15, 20,000. Yeah, so the insurance company said, no, we're paying out too much money here, and decided to put a cap at $3,500. This is why you're finding a lot of rehabs are closing down, because they were living off those substantial amount of money before 2010. Now they're not able to survive because of the cap that fiscal put into place. But in your husband's case, if he's having pain or whatever, and how long has he been seeing his doctor?
He didn't come to the doctor.
No, I mean, how long is his doctor, like your family doctor, how long has he been going to his doctor? I'm not talking about for the accident, like before that.
He has been probably maybe in a year.
Okay, because if he has a good relationship with his doctor, he can revisit the situation. Let the doctor know he was involved in an accident at a particular time, and see if there's anything. Normally, if the pain doesn't go away or whatever, the doctor would refer you to a physiotherapist or a chiropractor, depending on your situation. Yeah.
He had a passenger anyway in his car, and
Did the passenger put in a claim?
no, but of course we have this letter that the passenger has seen all the accident, but nobody really take it in mind. So it was so strange.
Because the passenger had an accident, and the passenger could not testify.
Yes, it was another person who was saying because they just left from their workplace. The other was also like witnesses. So
Outside the car.
outside the car,
okay, now I
but
see.
still like they claimed him anyway guilty. So
So
funny.
the only thing I would say, it's
fine.
very important
Yeah,
to
very
make
important.
sure that you do have a valid insurance, because that's what's going to determine your benefits. And what they're doing now, the benefits is not paid out at the initial stage. So as a paralegal too, once we initiate that claim, like we call it an intake. So once we do an intake on the individual, we will determine how far this claim is going to go. And then at that time, whichever law firm or whichever lawyer we're connected to, we will refer the file.
But I think everybody has auto insurance, like if they're driving a car.
No, some people don't have insurance. But if you're in a car where there's no insurance, if the driver has no insurance, the fiscal, they have a fund set up. It's called MVAC. It stands for Motor Vehicle Accident Fund. They will cover you on that end.
Okay.
Right? It will be submitted on the same OCF1, but it will be indicated on there that you don't have no form of it. So but there are certain things that you wouldn't be able to sue the other party, especially if that person doesn't have an insurance. You will only be able to get the medical taken care of and your rehabilitation, meaning going to physio. They will take care of that aspect, but you wouldn't be able to sue anybody.
And that's important because you might have loss of income.
Yeah, and that's another thing with the loss of income. I do income tax on a yearly basis as well, and what I noticed, quite a few people has been in, whether in WSIB. I had one client just recently, and this is a learning experience for everyone. He's a delivery person, and a doll plate at where he was working.
What do you mean a dog plate?
Doll plate, the door from the dock at Walmart came down and dropped on his foot and broke it. So it was broken. So when he came in, the first thing I asked him, because I know, I said, do you have insurance? Have you contributed to WSIB? And have you been paid into your taxes? He said he hasn't been paying into his taxes. I said, for how many years? He said, for 4 years. As a result of that, WSIB did not pay him what he should be getting, because they base it on your notice of assessment. So that's another thing too. When you're going after a big lawsuit, you do need your NOAs, or you do need to file. That's the important thing, to file every year, because in the payout, in the end, in the settlement, you'll be able to get your full, whatever your income was. They base it on that to put in for settlement for you.
Tell me something though, because the government really doesn't want you to do your income tax unless it's necessary.
What do you mean necessary?
For instance, if you're not earning enough money, they don't want to hear from you.
Well, they say in situations like those, because you have some people who put in a claim, they might be on ODSP or they might be on welfare. In situations like those, even if you sustain a serious injury, a claim will submit it for you. However, in the end, you have to pay them back.
When you pay them back,
Whatever money that they have been given
you mean the government will pay?
no, when you get your settlement from the insurer, part of it, especially ODSP, there's a percentage that has to be given back to them out of that settlement that you receive. Oh, yes. This is why when you're filing your claim, on the initial claim, all these questions are asked in the beginning. So when we do an intake, all these questions, it's for a reason. Because in the end, it's going to determine your payouts in the final thing. And yes, once a 2-year stage kicks in, which is the limitation for the lawsuit, from that day, maybe till 10 years, takes a long time to settle. Because no insurance company wants to take the full 100% claim. As you mentioned, the 50-50, that's why. Because they don't want to take the full blame for anything. So they can offer 50%, 30%, whatever it is, of what it is. That's why they came up with the 50-50. So what they're saying, your husband's insurance should be responsible for half, and our insurance take care of it. That's all. And it's a never-ending thing with insurance claim. And everybody's situation comes in differently all the time. Because you're faced with people with different scenarios, different stories when they come in. Sometimes you can detect right off the bat that it's a staging. Just by, when they sit in front of you, you can tell. That's when it's a staging. So, but you can't tell the person you can't take the claim, right? So you have to try to figure out a way, okay, how am I going to get out of it? So we do face with some challenges too. I've sat into a situation where I've seen people actually stage, and the insurer, I hired a private investigator and found out that this was an actual stage, and they set it up. They set up the employer. They have everything in place based on what the insurer, but the insurer found out somewhere along the line that this was staged, and everything is cut out. You have situations where people is pretending that something is wrong with them, so they go walking around with a cane, thinking that's going to convince. But the insurer, they know what they're looking for. So you have to be careful. But what we try to tell people, please, if you're in an accident, go to your doctor. It doesn't matter how regular you go, it's important to go to the doctor, because the doctor's report is what's going to substantiate the thing. Nothing else. The medical evidence, that's what that's about. Because what they will say, if you're in an accident and you don't go to the doctor, and when the lawyer is ready to do the discovery or presented your case, the other side is going to say nothing is wrong with you. Because if something was wrong with you, you would be going to the doctor. So they look at the medical evidence. And as long as there's